Phil, I called you up today because I wanted to talk to you about a video that I saw from Distraction Makers that was asking the musical question: does standard need to exist? Uh, Interesting video. I like a lot of their points because they come from an EDH perspective on that channel. One of the hosts of the show was like a pretty competitive, like my level of competitive. Like probably didn't make the pro tour or anything, but grinded for a very long time and tried to make that sort of their experience with Magic. So and they basically put up what they were calling a steel man case for each situation. Why standard needs to exist and why standard doesn't need to exist. And I thought that would be interesting to do for legacy specifically and sort of talk about do like a steel man and a steel man argument for both, like why legacy needs to exist in Magic the Gathering and why legacy may not need to exist. Now I'm taking this from two different angles here. I'm not saying like we need to not have legacy or anything like that, but like are legacy and eternal formats necessary now for Magic the Gathering to exist? My in my heart of hearts, Phil, I say yes, but I think reality may bear out otherwise.
I don't think it's a difficult question. I think the extent
All
of
right,
it is,
show's over then.
to be fair, I think like from Watts's POV, they straight up don't. Like they can curate only to Commander, and they can make every set that is for Standard or Pioneer or whatever other 1v1 format just have a bunch of plants for Commanders. And we see that over and over. Like anytime they talk about cards that are in Standard legal sets, they'll talk about yeah we wanted to do something such and such for Commander, or give Commander players access to whatever. Like everything revolves now around Commander, and the 1v1 formats are just a byproduct of being grandfathered into the game. But like, it is not something that they're like I mean, if you just look at the mechanics, like the design of mechanics now, like if you look at Warp, like Warp is just like, what if we just gave you
before
come on, man.
We go all the way in.
Come on
one side of this argument. Let's start with which argument we're working on here. Finding the right high-end cards for legacy, vintage, pre-modern, or old-school Magic can be challenging. That's where friends 3-for-1 trading come in.
3-for-1 Trading is buying all Magic the Gathering singles and entire collections, big and small. They're one of the top trading card game traders, buying way over 1 million Magic cards a year, and they are more than happy to make you an offer on your cards. In addition to sending in your cards, you'll also have the chance to sell and trade them at MagicCon Atlanta, taking place from September 26th to 28th. Huge thanks to 3-for-1 Trading for supporting the Legacy community. Now back to the show.
Because I would like to. I think the argument you're setting up is the Steelman argument for why it doesn't need to exist. But let's start.
Hold on. I'm saying it doesn't need to exist from Watsy's POV.
Yeah. That is an argument you can have, right? So let's start with the Steelman argument, at least that I have, for why legacy and eternal formats do need to exist for the health of Magic. I think for WotC, they need to keep this in mind, because if they don't, this will be to the detriment of the game. My thesis here is about the onboarding and offboarding of players. People will pick up I think the life cycle, they were saying the life cycle of an average Magic player is like 7 years, but I think that significantly shortens when you remove the possibility of eternal formats, especially competitive eternal formats, because people don't have anything to necessarily aspire to, right? If you're playing Commander, you play Commander with your friends, but eventually you get to the point where you're like, okay, I've grown out of that group of friends, or they've moved, or like 7 years is a long time, Phil. What happens is eventually you get to a point where you're like, I need to play Magic still, hopefully, right? And I need a new thing to do. Now, over that time, you've put together a collection of cards, and your collection is, one, worth something, and two, can be ported into other formats like Legacy or Modern or Vintage. You can play eternal formats and still get joy out of your Magic cards. That means that you continue. Wait. That means that you continue purchasing Magic cards, right? It's year 7 for me. Do I quit or do I keep playing? Well, I can still play Commander with this group of randos I know. That's fine. But I'm also having fun building a legacy deck, or it gives you something to build to. And I think that players need that sort of financial incentive, the like sunk fallacy of like, I still have cards, I still need to keep buying stuff right? Because they're having fun playing Magic in that little pocket of however they liked it, but those cards are becoming worth something. And ostensibly, now I know not everyone gets into Legacy or whatnot, but everyone plays more than one. I would venture to say everyone plays more than one Magic format, even if they mostly play Commander. They either play Cube or they draft, you know. So I think that a lot of people look at their cards and they don't just like, at least with draft, I can see with draft, right? Like you're just like, I only draft, I sell my cards off afterwards and just keep drafting. I'm a limited player only. I can understand that as a stance, but I just don't see only Commander players forever and ever. Like those people experience the game in ways other than Commander, and I think that if you remove those ways to play, those 60 card formats, that they just don't have a reason to keep playing or buying cards. Like maybe they do play, but maybe they don't buy cards anymore because they're just playing with the quote unquote board game that they bought in their Commander decks.
I have 2 points where I think that, like, for a lot of players, Commander is the only thing that they play.
Yeah,
Is the
now I
like
agree
because
with
it
you
is the
that for a
overwhelming.
lot of players, but I don't think for the majority of players they only play Commander.
I think for
I
an
think-
an overwhelming astronomical majority of players only play Commander. Like an obscene.
I mean, I'd love to see
like,
the
like,
data on that. But
like-
I
like-
think that a majority of players play Commander and then even dabble in something
30
else.
million players worldwide. I would venture to say around the 25 million mark is where it's Commander only.
No, I don't think that many players play. I think that's a lot of kitchen table players. Honestly, I think there are a lot of people who
kitchen
don't
table
play.
players playing Commander.
No, I don't think they play Commander. I don't think the kitchen table players even play Commander. I think kitchen table players are the outlier on, like, they just buy whatever they see at the store kind of people. And they'll never be affected by this argument one way.
Well, you know what they see at the store? Commander product.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I agree. Yeah.
I think there's two things for when you're saying, like, the argument that it's like, oh yeah, you can use your cards in all these other formats. Like, you keep buying new product because you know that you can use it forever and always. That's not true in this world. WotC can just determine unilaterally via their power creep what is going to make it and not make it.
This is true.
Look at if you were to look at what is played in Modern, what is played in Legacy, and what is played in Vintage, it's all the same cards. Like, outside of the stuff that is only available in a particular format, like you can only play the Moxen in Vintage. If you look at the threat base, you can play Psychic Frog and Murktide Regent, and Bowmaster, and Psychic Frog, and Bowmaster, and Tameo, and Urza Saga, and Bowmaster, and Psychic Frog, and Murktide Regent. And in some cases, like in Legacy, you get up the Beanstalk, and in Modern, you get Expressive Iteration, and it's not even fast enough because you just play the energy package that they pre-con to you in a Modern Horizon set. And now Legacy, everybody's looking at, like, the new builds of, like, energy package creatures that are just pre-conned into, like, working with each other, and they just.
I agree, and that has a financial detriment to the game that definitely takes a little bit away from the argument I'm talking about there.
I'm saying that the argument that, like, you can use whatever cards you want forever is an argument of the past, because that isn't true anymore, because most cards are not enough to keep up with the arbitrary power creep sets that they put into the
there
format.
are some cards that won't be power creep, Phil. Dual lands that
but that's what I mean.
Players end up collecting.
Yeah, but those are things that they aren't reprinting. It's not like WotC can resell those things.
But I think that without the onus on players to go and get those cards for other formats, then why are they even getting? Why aren't they just proxying them?
They should.
And then here's the thing about proxying, Phil. Once you do your first proxy and you realize that it affects nothing, you keep doing it, and you go, new Commander set, huh? Well, I'll just proxy that whole deck.
As you should.
A quarter of the price. Now, I firmly believe that is the way to go, because Commander tournaments don't exist in a way that cares about proxies. So, I mean, sure.
The player base is so overwhelming in terms of how many people play Commander that WotC putting all their chips into the basket of unsanctioned Magic means that, like, players could just ignore them, print their designs, and play with proxies wherever they wanted, even in the conventions where they're doing it, and like there wouldn't be any enforcement for it because it's not sanctioned, and yet it's still making them billions and billions of dollars.
But here's the thing, Phil, is we're not in. So we were talking about that 7-year gap, right? Same thing with the the using, and we'll have another conversation about IPs and stuff, but that the like the Spider-Man IP, the Lord of the Rings IP, Fallout, all that stuff, right? There's no good data on retention there, because if the average life cycle of a player is 7 years, we haven't seen if somebody buys Lord of the Rings product and goes, cool, I played with that for like a couple years and I'm out.
Zach,
They didn't print any more Lord of the Rings stuff, right? Like, so you get to a point with this stuff that the retention falls off if you have no other reason to play the game than I'm playing casual with my friends and they printed the thing I like, right?
I would make the argument that retention isn't the goal.
No, well, at a point,
the goal is
retention becomes a goal.
Retention
you need some
has got
amount
to be
retention. You need somebody. You can't just have $25 million Final Fantasy opening weekend and then hope to repeat that process for every single IP until people are like, no, I played Magic once. They put out a Final Fantasy set. They're not. Don't worry, they're never going to put out another one of your things again, and they'll stop. Eventually, you'll hit full saturation.
Will you?
The fan thing that people like, yeah, because okay, they do a Dragon Ball set. Like, they're apparently a certain point, the Venn diagram of fandoms does become a full circle, and every fandom gets served at some point, right? Like,
dude,
to a point.
No, because they've turned Magic as the game engine into just a way to leech onto the players that play it by getting outside IP. The thing is that new IP is going to be created always because there's always going to be a desire for entertainment and whatever. Like, by the time WotC can even catch up to what has already been out, there will have been a whole new rush of things that have built new followings that they will eventually then be able to leech onto that. Like, they have moved away from...
Are we making people fast enough is the real question. Are we making people fast enough?
Which
is a whole other podcast.
Like, at a certain point, they could... Like, there is... One of my favorite quotes when it comes to like writing stories, like and storytelling in general, is like, history has written more than we will ever be able to create. Like, there is enough out there right now that if WotC started just with the IPs that they currently have, if they wanted to funnel every IP that is even like tangentially related in any way to like nerd fandom at all, they would not have enough time before they would never be able to catch up.
I agree I agree with what you're saying, but what I am saying is that you get to a point that people served that, like, think about like how our podcast works, right? Like, people with ears. Okay, that you got to cut some people off. There are some people that are deaf, right? They can't hear the podcast, right? Then you have people that have hands to play Magic the Gathering. Okay, you got to cut off some other stuff there. Okay. People who would play a card game, right? It's smaller now. People who would play Magic the Gathering, it's even smaller. It's this big, right? People who would play Legacy, it's this tiny sliver. People who would play Legacy and then listen to us as well, it's even smaller than that, right?
Yeah. I know where you're going.
You get to a point with this diagram, this pie chart, right, where everyone that could be served a IP gets served, right? And you know, going back to the like, why do we need Legacy? It's because those people, us Legacy sickos, yeah, I'm gonna buy some Spider-Man cards because it's Magic and I have to. You know, I don't have a choice. Right?
No, that's
if you're a casual
you don't have
player,
to.
No, Phil, you got to understand where I'm coming from here.
Yeah.
I have to, as a Legacy player, because I have to remain competitive. Now, Mr. EDH guy does not have to. The game is however he wants to make it. If WotC wants people to continue buying cards, they have to force you in to opt in. And the only way that you can be forced to opt in is by playing competitive formats. That is, if nothing I said matters at all in this podcast, that is the main difference between those business models. If you force people to opt into your business model, they're stuck. Like, you can print whatever you want. Like, I don't want to buy Spider-Man cards. I like Spider-Man. I like Marvel Comics. I keep it in the comics, right? I have to, though, because it's a competitive format that there may be some cards in there that are good in one of my decks, or that like warp the game, or that are just, you know, power crept up enough that I have to get them, right? That means that they've locked me in on that purchase, right? Whereas a casual player can buy just that one deck and be like, oh, I'm done. You know, it's the same thing with D&D, you know?
I think I would zoom out. I think, like, I hear where your argument is, and my lens on it is just slightly more askew. I think that, like, there are people who are retained Magic players because of Magic the game, not because of the products that they're making, right? So the game engine of Magic is, like, a compelling enough puzzle that is forever interesting enough to try and attempt to solve in a way that makes you believe that you can solve it without ever actually being solvable because there's so many variables that are changing constantly. I think that aside from like the like absolute like just selling out all of what selling out the game to all of these other IPs just to change the bottom line a bit faster. I think the thing that like is going to be lost, which was sort of lost when they decided that they could just arbitrate scarcity with like
Secret
the
layers
1
and
of 500
stuff. Yeah.
cards and just printing like what they think is like the masterpiece type stuff where they're like, yep, we're just going to make the high-end jewelry that we want and tell you that it's worth more. Like I think all of the story and like clout that was built upon the game from the community is more or less obsolete. What I mean by that is Psychic Frog is the best creature in Vintage. It was one of the better creatures in Legacy before it was banned. It's still one of the best creatures in Modern. And it just was put that way on rate. How many players playing Psychic Frog could tell you what inspired that card in the first place?
Probably very few.
Probably very few.
Out of the Venn diagram.
So
I think yeah, it'd be small.
For those who don't know, Psychic Frog is just a really
Finkel,
lazy variation on Psychotog.
Yeah, and it's not just Psychotog, Phil.
Yeah, I understand Shadow Mage Infiltrator is in there, but
it's a Shadow Mage Infiltrator and Psychotog put together into one card.
On more powerful abilities that cost less mana at mana cheaper. So, but like if you were to look at those, like they make a lot of designs that are self-referential designs to their history. And they have, I think, with all of like the new, between the power creep and the expansion into IPs that are not themselves, that are just, selling out the game engine for, to service these other IPs in a way that like, isn't necessarily for the player base or the entrenched player base. It is sort of just cold shouldering the game history so that when those self-referential type cards are made, which they make a lot of, but like when those self-referential cards are made, they won't be things that are going to be like, oh, look how cool this is celebrated. It will only be for the players that otherwise can see the Easter egg. Like there was just a thing that was going around where everybody was like posting as though they made the discovery when, like everybody else. It was the Arcade Post.
Is this good?
No, Arcade Post's card of I think it was Secret Identity in the Spider-Man set, and he did a callback to his Unmask art.
Sure.
And everybody was posting it like, "Oh my god, this is so cool! Look, he did the thing with the stuff where he like mimicked the art and the IP in universe and out of universe, and isn't this cool?" And I say, it's cool because Arcade Post was able to lean on the history and weight that he's had in the game to do something that otherwise was undermining the game and that history to begin with. And so to me, the self-referential of that art is the perfect encapsulation of it's hitting on the players that are entrenched that understand what that callback is. And then it's like the new player coming in, they're not going to know that Arcade Post did Unmask and has a history of being one of the most prolific artists in the game that goes to all the conventions and all the stuff. They're going to see Peter Parker with his mask split apart over his face. I think that like the thing that's lost isn't the entrenched players, it's the referential and the gravitas that the game had before it sold out.
All right. Well, so I was gonna spend half the show doing the Iron Man argument, or the Iron Man argument for one and the Iron Man argument for the other, but you seem to put up a pretty strong Iron Man argument for the other.
Talk me through the other side, because I'm a stubborn piece of shit that like can't like I need to see the other side.
Now you want to defend Legacy against me. So on the no, WotC doesn't need it aspect is that they can just, again, like you were saying, they can print whatever they want, right? But now they're in a situation where they can lean on their IP, on other IPs completely, not have to worry about game design at all, right? Like a little bit, obviously, but they don't have to worry about balance. They don't have to like worry about like, oh, is this balanced? Are we gonna have to ban something in Legacy? Not that they do a lot of worrying about that sort of thing, but basically they don't have to be restricted by what their level of power creep is. They can power creep every set that they want, right? So they're unrestricted in the design that they can make. They're only restricted by their imagination and by the scruples that Mark Rosewater might still have. Does that mean that people will continue playing Magic without an eternal format to kind of be that thing that they grip onto to say, oh, I need dual land so that I can But here's the thing in that, Phil. I do have one more point to the why they still need it. if you get to a point where you no longer care about the history of the game, you don't want to incentivize people to play. Like, let's say you get to the point where less than 1.1 like 0.1% players even want to play Legacy, even know what it is, right? Same thing with Vintage, right? Well, why is Black Lotus even worth anything anymore? Where do you get to a point in a secondary market that no one cares what things cost because no one plays that way anymore? Look at other dead CCGs. There's a giant dip in the last like 20 years. It's only come back in the last like 5 for games like Star Wars: The Collectible Card Game, Lord of the Rings, the Middle Earth CCG. All these games had thriving financial markets. At one point in time, Legend of the Five Rings and Star Wars were more heavily played. This is to Inquest magazine, than Magic the Gathering was, right? This was sometime in the 90s. There was a point in time that you were so financially incentivized to play these games that a friend of mine sold a Mox Pearl to get a Darth Vader, right? Then, there was those games died. The 90s ended and those games died, right? And you could walk up to a comic shop that happened to have a bunch of packs and stuff, and you could open a Darth Vader and it was a joke. Those cards were $5-6. And when I got back into the Star Wars game to grab stuff, I think it was like maybe $12 for a Darth Vader, a card that my friend sold for a Mox Pearl. $12, right?
I think
you get
to
let me finish this.
Yeah.
So you get to a point where if there's no real reason to play the game aside from casual fun, which people were still doing, then why are things worth anything?
Because
why does WotC still exist to make Magic cards if the Magic cards aren't worth anything? Like, why don't players
I think that's blanketing all of the Magic cards. And I think that, like, you could argue that for the stuff that they're printing that's arbitrary scarcity, right? The different colored chocobos or whatever that are selling for 5 figures or whatever, that's arbitrary. They're like, we're just arbitrarily printing this amount and that's it. And we could print more if we wanted to. And there's nothing that tells us that we can't outside of whatever deal that we don't know about that they had with Final Fantasy, right? But like, if at any point they were like, hey guys, we'd really love to print more chocobos, like, can we do that? And if they get the rights to do that, then they can just do it and fuck you all. But the difference of the like OG cards, like when they printed like the original Black Lotus, like the game could end tomorrow. And all of the old like cards that like have all that value, like all the power and everything, those will sustain. And here's why. They were and had the cultural impact without it being arbitrary like that at the time when they were made. And they are, by the contracts as they currently stand, can never reprint those cards. Here's an example that I think like you made me think of. Ken Griffey Jr. doesn't play baseball anymore, right?
Not that I know of.
His rookie card is still probably worth a lot of money. But he doesn't play anymore.
I would find out. I have no idea how I would find out.
Like the Mickey Mantle,
Don Mattingly or Babe
the Mickey Mantle baseball card, like Barry Bonds' home run ball, like is still probably like if the guy who owns it wanted to resell the 73rd home run ball, he could probably make more than what he bought it for, right? Because even though baseball still plays, Barry Bonds doesn't. Like the game could stop printing cards tomorrow, but then people will still play. We talk about the pre-modern community a lot. No new cards come in, and that community has only grown. Right? Yeah. But like that format has not changed since its inception. Nothing has come in, nothing has changed.
Counterpoint to your point, Phil. What happens if and you got to think long term on this stuff. Let's say Magic goes away, right? And it's been 20 plus years. Do you think those cards still hold value?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The original cards,
question. Next question. What if baseball stops being a national pastime? Baseball just goes away.
Yeah, baseball's you want to know why? Because it's history, dude. Like the history can't be undone.
No, hold on. Let me finish this then. So think about other sports that have existed through history, right? I'm sure there were like plates that you could get for gladiators that were worth something at some point. Now look, that's a long time, right? But like you get to a point where people don't care about these things anymore.
If Spartacus's original helm went up on eBay right now, it would sell for unbelievable amounts.
It would be because it's ancient, not because it's
It would be because of the clout behind it, dude. These are all Veblen items. Everything that we're talking about is only what it's worth because of the stories that are imbued behind them. The markers of what, like, the storied history of Black Lotus remains even if the game does not. So, like, the Black Lotuses will always be worth whatever the Black Lotuses are worth because of those stories. And then as long as people care about those stories, those things will always have value. And it seems to me that, like, looking at, like, other Veblen items, like, yes, those things will wax and wane over time depending on how much people care about them. But, like,
Veblen, this is a word I'm just learning. Is this something, like, super unique?
Veblen?
Yeah.
No, a Veblen item is something, like, the definition of a Veblen item is essentially something that has no actual value to it, like no real
Like
actual value.
Okay.
It's only the value that somebody ascribes to it. Uniquely about Veblen items is, like, typically it like goes against normal economics. Like, normally, if somebody really, really wants something, then that would increase the demand and therefore the price would go up, right? And then same thing, like, if the stock goes up, then the price would theoretically go down because the stock is like, the supply is, like, either matching or overreaching demand, in which case the price goes down to try and meet wherever that's going to happen, right? A Veblen item is as the price of something goes up, theoretically the demand should go down because some people are like, oh, well, it's too expensive for me now, I don't want it. But, like, the more expensive a Veblen item gets, the more people
so
want
many
it.
Magic cards are like that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but at the same time, Veblen items, baseball cards, any other, like, collectible item of any kind, those things don't actually serve a function beyond being a thing. They aren't food, they're not shelter, they're not transportation, they're not things that you actually need to live.
All right. Well, okay. So what do you guys think? Does Magic need formats like Legacy, Vintage, Modern, etc. to exist, actually be a thing, or not? Comment below.
Comment below. I want to cap the episode talking about, like, to just close it up. I think that where the world of the 1v1 formats, the reason that we care about the 1v1 format so much is because of the history that they had to begin with. Now that WotC's going into this new IP, there is no history there, so it will always feel shallow. And therefore, like, all of the items that are there will only apply to the people who, like, are outside the game, like the Final Fantasy collectors, the Spider-Man collectors, or whatever, that care about that stuff because they have a different history of being entrenched with those stories, right? The Veblen is different for them than it is for us. And so from my POV, WotC could end all of the 1v1s tomorrow if they felt like it, and it wouldn't change a thing. We would all still play. We would all still want cards.
Well, I think we're Veblen items here at the Eternal Durdles podcast. Phil, before we sign off, I just wanted to quickly remind everybody that we are supported mostly through your Patreon support, patreon.com/EternalDurdles. If you have the wherewithal to be able to help support the show and all the offerings we're offering you on a literal daily basis at this point, please go to patreon.com/EternalDurdles. Your support means everything to us. And from there, we'll catch you on the next one. Oh, yeah. All of the content we're giving you on Eternal Durdles Patreon is ad-free. So if you've been bombarded with ads, that's the place to go to not have to deal with the ads. Thanks for watching. Hey, if you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe button.
You can also support us on patreon.com/EternalDurdles, which now offers the new Deck Donation tier. I'll play literally whatever you want.
So brew your spiciest or stock us up with a stock list.
I'll literally play whatever you want.
Thanks for watching.